Welcome to One-on-One with Expert Flyer. I'm your host, Lisa Caslin. You know, we typically cover subjects that are related to air travel for obvious reasons, but today we are going on the road with Marc and Julie Bennett. They are full-time RVers. They've been doing it for about 5 years now, and they're also the authors of a book called Living the RV Life, Your Ultimate Guide to Life on the Road. So let me say hello to Marc and Julie. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm so glad to have both of you. Just don't start fighting, okay?
We'll try.
So I'm fascinated by your book, and you also have a website as well, right? RVLove.com?
RVLove, that's RVLOVE.com.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that and what people can find there.
Yeah. Well, when we first hit the road, Lisa, as full-time RVers back in the summer of 2014, Marc was working full-time. I was in between jobs, and so I created this blog and YouTube channel as a way to just start sharing the adventures that we were having and what we were learning along the way. And so we write a lot of blog posts. We do reviews on campgrounds and places that we've stayed at, and a lot of YouTube videos that show people, how you can do this, how you can live this life, and the kind of experiences that you can have. So, yeah, we've been sharing a lot of content now for, almost 5 years now.
Wow, it's terrific. And as I understand, you were pursued by a division of Simon & Schuster to write the book that just came out last November, right?
Right. So it's Living the RV Life. That was Adams Media. They're a division of Simon & Schuster. They had done their research, and they do a lot of lifestyle books. And they identified RVing as a hot topic, a hot trend that was really growing, and didn't find any other books out there that really helped people understand what it's all about and why would someone even want to do this? Why would someone want to give up their home and hit the road in an RV travel? And so they wanted something that was really aspirational meets practical, and identified a real gap in the market. When they found our website and our YouTube channel, and they're like, we think you guys would be a really great fit for this of what we're looking for. Are you interested? And of course we said yes. And something like 6 or 8 weeks later, the deal was done, the manuscript was submitted, and the book was already in production, and then it came out in November, as you said.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, there are quite a number of people that are either vacationing using an RV, or some people are just living out of their recreational vehicles, somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 million if you count them all up together, which is quite a large number. So, let's get underneath the covers with this a little bit. What are the trends? I mean, why do you think that RVing is becoming so popular? Is it mostly retirees who are just like bucking the trend and saying, hey, you know what, I don't want to own a home anymore. I want to do what I always wanted to do, which is to travel, and I'm going to hit all those bucket lists, and I'm going to drive there?
Well, I definitely think that's a big part of it, is that bucket list, and that the people that are hitting 65 now are far more adventurous and youthful than perhaps in the generation prior. And so they have more of that youthful, experiential, and lifestyle adventure. So they want to do an RVing instead of just having the condo in Florida kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I do think that that's a big part of the growth of the industry. But I also think it's on the other end of the spectrum as well, that one of the second largest population bubbles is the younger generation and millennials, and so many of them have the ability to work remotely, that buying into housing is expensive, and so they start looking at RVing as a way to live an adventurous life as well. And so you have two large population segments that are both having access to the RV lifestyle. But if you're thinking of we're also lately seeing more of a trend towards smaller RVs. A few years ago, when we first hit the road, there were a lot of really big RVs were popular. Lately, we're seeing a trend towards smaller. But I think the general trend is definitely more and more people are finding a way to get out on the road.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So let's say somebody wanted to try this lifestyle on without laying down this massive amount of cash. I mean, if you look at some of these Winnebagos, I mean, they are in the hundreds of thousands. It's like buying a house, literally. And I know that there's smaller ones. So what's your advice for somebody who wants to test it out before they commit to it?
Well, I think one of the first places to start, which is, a really great word for anyone that's not sure if they want to do this, especially if they have no experience, is renting an RV. You don't have to buy one right away. You know, some people get out there and, you know, especially if you're going out as a couple, one may love it and one may hate it. Well, it's a pretty big life decision and investment to make if it's something that you're not both on board with. So I think renting's a great way to do it. It may seem expensive when you look at the nightly rate, but when you think about what you could potentially lose, spending all the money on an RV, paying the taxes, then you get hit with depreciation and trying to sell it, it ends up being a pretty good investment to make sure this is something you're interested in first. But you also, Lisa, you don't have to buy new, and you don't have to buy big, and you don't have to buy fancy. And so, you know, we always say to people, you will learn the most with your first RV. That was the one that's going to teach you the most. It can be really hard to nail your RV purchase from day one. So, you know, start with less expensive and just get a feel for it. Because sometimes when you don't know what you don't know, you think you fall in love with an RV. It's very easy to fall in love with those new ones at the RV shows and the dealerships. But when you're actually in it, spending extended time living in it, you start realizing, oh, this doesn't really work, or there's really not much room to move my arms around in the shower, or I really hate climbing over you in the bed to get up in the middle of the night. All of those little things that are big things, especially the more time you spend in it. So I think renting or buying less expensive and used to start, really good ways to sort of get in and then work your way up to something that feels more comfortable in terms of the RV and the floor plan and layout, but also financially.
Yeah, and to looking for a number, if you're looking for a number, we've known people who spent less than $10,000 on their RV and actually went out and full-timed in it for over a year with that. Of course, we know people who spent hundreds of thousands as well, but the lifestyle is still the same. You still see the same sunsets. You still get to travel to a lot of the same places and experience the lifestyle without having the big expense.
Okay, well said, well said. And just to kind of close it out with I think at one point there is a site or a couple of sites where you can rent, as you say, and you know it isn't cheap. And I think the main reason for that is the insurance associated with using another person's RV. Is that really what the issue is, or?
Well, there's big chains of rental companies that would have the insurance included, and then there's other companies like RV Share that's renting ones from private individuals. But there is an expense, but they can be hundreds of dollars, but like per night. But it could cost you thousands of dollars really quick if you bought one and then decided to resell.
And some other dealers too. We have a friend that ended up buying a little Class C, but he was able to rent an RV from the dealership first and thought that was the one that he wanted and realized it wasn't. It was too small, and he ended up with another one. But because he bought through that particular dealer, I think the cost of his rental ended up getting offset against his final purchase price of the RV. So that's one way to do it too if you're really serious.
That's good. That's good. Okay. All right. So what are the things that you need to know absolutely to get started? You know, what's the, maybe 5 things, or, it doesn't have to be a specific number, but what would you say are the most important things to know before you get going with this?
Well, I think you really need to know the difference between the different types of RVs to think of what will be a good fit for your needs. I think that's a big part of the decision, and having success is having the right type of RV at least. And I think a really important factor is knowing how you're going to finance the lifestyle. Some people think, I'm just going to go grab an RV and I'll figure it out on the road. You really want to have a financial plan on how you're going to fund that lifestyle before you hit the road, something you can do remotely or if you're financially independent. So.
Or retired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Could someone, live on a modest, retirement income of, $2,000 or $3,000 a month?
Absolutely. In fact, we know a number of people that the reason that they RV is because it is the most financially viable way for them to live. There's a number of RV profile one-page case studies in our book, and one is a lady called Joanne who's 60, and she was medically retired. I think she's on her Social Security, earning something like $22,000 a year, and she used to be a high earner, $150,000 a year, and health situation got in the way, and she was barely scraping by on $22,000 a year, living in Connecticut. And she thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay here, spending a fortune in this little crummy apartment and paying a fortune in heating bills to keep me warm every winter? Or am I going to go an RV, and she went and bought a van that she completely had modified to her needs, and she's been on the road now for, I think, 5 years, something like that, traveling full-time, has traversed the country multiple times, and travels as a solo female 60-year-old RV, and mostly, a lot of the time, dry camping in the desert in really remote locations and in national forests, so she does it really frugally.
Yeah, she does it very frugally, and we also know people who do it on the much higher end of that, but it's not uncommon to find people that can live this lifestyle for under $3,000 a month. That
even under $2,000. We've seen them do it for, $1,500 a month. We've seen it as low as that, but that's definitely the more frugal end.
Yeah, it also, how you can, like anything in lifestyle, you can see people who live in $1 million homes, and you see people who live very frugally, but
sure.
So this lifestyle has even more variability, but one of the things we love about the lifestyle is that such a higher percentage of your monthly expense is variable, not fixed. Your two big expenses are fuel and where you're staying, and you can have significant impact on your monthly by just looking at those. They're not fixed costs like people with a large rent or mortgage payment.
Right.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some of the recommended places to explore, or, let's say you want to do the semi-permanent thing, maybe half the year or whatnot. What is your advice there? What would you recommend in terms of destinations?
Well, the great thing about RVers is, of course, we all have wheels, so we can go wherever we choose. And most RVers tend to head north in the summer or to elevation where it's cooler up in the mountains, and they go south for the winter. And, that's where the weather's optimal. RVs are not as well insulated as regular homes. So, you can get around and explore the country and get a feel for what you really like. You might have spent your whole life living in the Northeast, as some friends of ours I'm just thinking of right now that they absolutely love Arizona, and they'll spend 5 months a year in Arizona from, October through to late March. And that's something that she spent her whole life living in Rhode Island. She said, I feel like I'm home when I'm in the desert. She loves it and never had been out west before. But, Arizona is a very popular place in Florida and even Texas for people for semi-permanent routes in your RV. If you don't want to be traveling and on the move all the time and spend 4 or 5 or 6 months of the year in one location, and like in the winter, that's very common for a lot of RVers to do that. A lot of Canadians come down and spend, I think they're allowed about 5 months of the year out of the country to maintain their benefits in Canada. So they'll come down to all the southern part of the country and then head back up north for the summer. So that's very, very common. That's called snowbirding. And that's what we're doing right now. We're in Key West right now. We came down here for some RV friends that got married, and we get to hang out here in the great weather. And then, in a couple of months' time, we'll be further up north again. So, I think you can get around and just get a feel for what you like. I mean, a lot of people love Florida because of all the great things that Florida has to offer. Other people don't like the humidity or the heat or the bugs, and then you can go to the desert or the mountains. And so that's what we really love about it, is you can just try places on for size. We met a family that decided to pack up their life in D.C. and hit the road to move, and they didn't know where they wanted to settle down and put down roots in another home somewhere else. And so they bought an RV and they spent a year traveling to find where was going to be their new home in their RV. And they ended up in Colorado. So, that's another example. You don't have to do this full time, and you don't have to do it long term. You might just do it as a sabbatical for a year to hit the reset button on your life or your health or your relationship. And we see a lot of that as well.
That's great. All right, so hit me with the drawbacks. Just so people are aware, full circle, of what they're getting into. So what are some of the things that, might bug you?
Well, one thing that might bug you is that you are in a smaller space, especially if you're traveling with a family or even just a significant other that you generally have not had as much time together with, because that smaller space, I like to make the analogy that it's kind of like squeezing an orange. When you squeeze it, you might get some juicy stuff come out of there, but you can squeeze the whole lifestyle into a smaller space can bring up things that weren't necessarily there before.
But it gives you a great opportunity to communicate. So living in a small space can be tricky, but it's amazing how much easier it is to work through challenges because you can't run away and hide in another room of the house,
Yeah.
so it forces you to deal with problems head on. But another thing...
Yeah, the distance from family and friends and your community back home, I think, is another one that seems to be a tough one for people to adjust to, especially if they have deep roots in an area.
Especially during holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, special occasions, graduations, weddings, all of that kind of a thing. I think that's where it can get hard for people. But I think one big one that a lot of people, we really like to manage expectations around is RV. It's not like buying a new car where you can probably drive it for years without having any major issues, and you just need to give it a service every now and then. RVs constantly need things fixing on them. So I think that becomes one of the frustrations for a lot of RVs, especially if you buy a new one. You kind of can mistakenly assume I've bought new, there's nothing's going to go wrong with it. But for anyone that's built a brand new house or apartment, there's always a punch list where, they didn't put this up properly or they put this on backwards. That happens in RVs as well. And so it's kind of a car and a house in one, and then you're driving it down the road. It's like a moving earthquake all the time. So things are getting rattled loose, and screws are falling out, and, cupboard doors are falling off. Sometimes, not always, but these are the kind of the things that people go in knowing that I'm going to have to fix and repair and maintain the RV, and that's just part of the territory. We call it part of the adventure.
Yeah, managing that expectation, not having the perception that buying new is going to be like buying a new car, and also it's not like buying a house either, in the fact that these are more like cars in the way they depreciate. And so, some people sell their house that is generally an appreciating asset.
Right.
They buy and it's a depreciating asset, and they still pick a 20-year mortgage on it, because you can finance these long-term. But, you just got to make sure your eyes are wide open when you go into that decision. But, as long as you're educated, as long as you have your applications managed, you'll be all right.
Okay. What about, I'm a total rookie here, so I don't know. This may be a silly question, but let's talk about electricity, right? So, obviously, if the RV is on, the battery's on, you have electric. When you turn off the engine, do you still have electric?
That's a really good question. I'm sure a lot of people are wanting the same thing.
Yeah, and the RVs, they generally have, if they're a motorized RV, where you're talking about, that has an engine, like a motorhome, those, they will still have they'll have a battery for the chassis, and then they will also have batteries for the home portion of the RV. And if you're towing a trailer, the trailer will also have batteries that will power most systems in the RV, like the lights and refrigerators and stuff like that. A lot of the appliances run on propane and stuff, so that they can run off of the grid for a extended period of time. The bigger the battery banks, of course, the longer it can do that. But a lot of people spend the majority of their time in campgrounds or places where they can actually plug them in. And so when you're staying in a campground, especially if it's one that has what's called full hookups, it'll function just like a regular house. It'll have free-flowing electricity and water and sewer and everything. So, but that's what's great, is they do have the ability to go out in the middle of open land and have it still function mostly like a home. Ours can definitely do that, because we have a generator, we have solar, and we have large batteries, so we can spend extended time off the grid.
In fact, we just spent 7 weeks. This is our second RV. We bought an older one and decided to do a remodel on it. And we did the entire remodel off-grid with not plugged into power at all, just using the power of our lithium batteries and our solar system. So that's pretty crazy. 7 weeks completely off-grid, using power tools and skill saws and tile cutters.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, you can watch that series on our YouTube channel. It's pretty fun to watch, seeing this whole full construction going on completely off the grid on this friend's property. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Do you know many people who are doing this? So, you mentioned the retiree from Connecticut. Do you know of other, I guess, particularly women that are taking this on as a solo venture?
It's funny you say that, because I think initially we assumed there were more men out there doing this solo, but what we've come to find is there are more solo women out there RVing. Now, I don't know if that's because they're more social and we're seeing them at RV events, and maybe the men are hiding away and don't want to be around. But we've been amazed and inspired by how many women are hitting the road solo, of all ages, gals in their 20s all the way up to their 70s. There's a whole community out there. There's one lady featured in our book, Frida. She was 69 and her husband had passed, and she thought, I'm done. My life's over. I'm done. And then her friend, her husband had passed as well. She had an RV in her driveway that she wanted to get rid of. So this lady, Frida, bought it for $500, spent $10,000 getting it road ready, hit the road, drove to Alaska solo from California, and celebrated her 70th birthday in Seward. Yeah, she's on page 51 of our book, her story.